Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Welcome to the Liquidity Event. We're your hosts, AJ.
And I'm Shane.
And this is episode 103, being recorded on May 14th, airing on May 17th. A quick reminder for you listeners, we will answer your questions on the pod directly and live-ish. If you leave us a message, you can disguise your voice. You can use a fake name if you're shy. You can do that at memo.fm/theliquidityevent. So yeah, we'll answer whatever you want live on this podcast.
Or you can text AJ at 901-212-0127 if you want to get...
That is true. You can text me. So for all my friends who are listening, you can text me anytime. And as you know, I am always happy to answer your financial advice questions. But now I'm going to send you that link and you're going to have to record it first before I answer your question privately. And then I will also answer it on the air. And Shane, I think you're going to uphold the same policy with your friend group too, right?
My friends don't ask questions. They're more...
Okay. The strong silent type.
Southern men don't ask other Southern men how to manage
other
their
men
money.
for directions.
It's not what we're up to down here.
We've got an awesome episode for everyone today. We're going to talk about explosive, I don't know if it's explosive, but a New York Times article called was the 401k a mistake? And then, of course, we've got some listener questions, one about non-qualified stock options, one about contributing too much to your IRA, and one other fun one that I don't think we'll get to, so we'll save it for next time.
I love watching you in the moment straddle your real life with trying to be exciting for the podcast. We have an explosive article about 401ks. But he used to be like an actual journalist that wrote about like music drama, like actual like sexual harassment and like people going to jail and stuff. You're like, oh, this is then you caught yourself.
Explosive.
Like, all right.
Well,
let's calm it down a bit here.
The reason I called it explosive is because we talk about this a lot. Like you and I are like the money people, the only money people in our circle of friends and family. Like I don't have a lot of friends aside from my financial planner friends who I've made by being a financial planner. I didn't know anyone else who was in finance when I got into finance. So therefore, whenever anything happens in the wider cultural sphere about money, chances are, and I love you for this, friends and family, don't stop doing this. I'm just saying that this happens. This 401k article, like literally 6 people sent it to me and they're like, did you see this? And I'm like, yes, I did. And I'm going to talk about it on our podcast. So you better listen to our podcast. Had you seen this article before it got dropped in our company Slack?
No, I mean, honestly, I feel like I've read this article before just because when you work in finance, you read like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, et cetera, will kind of recycle these articles about, hey, did you actually know where 401ks came from and like what we're doing with them and where they're going and like how it was an accident and all that. So, and they do this with crypto. They do this with FIRE. I think we're going to talk about a FIRE article next week, which is kind of a similar thing. Like it's like a quick update a little bit. They changed the contributors, the byline, the images. Like it's a layup for them, right? It's a little bit provocative. It's everyone has a 401k
it's
or
explosive,
as familiar. Yeah. By the way, I was your gateway drug to the finance world. So I am the marijuana of AJ's finance heroin.
I feel like you were the gateway was getting paid more. You were the dealer who made it accessible.
Right. Come on over. I open up my jacket. Like I got these 401ks. I got these NSOs.
CFP. You want to more? Go get your CFP. Go get CFP.
I got your EA down here for the tax minded. If you're into that kind of thing, you kinky little freak.
You want to help people file their taxes? You go get your EA.
Yeah. I got some jet fuel over here.
Yeah. Anyways, speaking, I don't have a segue here. The article we're talking about today is from the New York Times Magazine. It's called, Was the 401k a Mistake? How an Obscure 45-Year-Old Tax Change Transformed Retirement and Left So Many Americans Out in the Cold by Michael Steinberger, who is a wine columnist and tennis enthusiast writing about 401ks. That's fine. He's a great writer. That's cool. This is the topic he's tackling this week. But just again, when we talk about personal finance issues in the wider media, we're often coming at it from an entertainment or an infotainment lens, if you will. Like, this is not a financial expert talking about their opinion. They're talking to other experts, handpicking certain stories and weaving together a narrative that's very compelling. And I think he did a great job with this article. It's one side of the story. He actually presents a few different sides of the story. So when you first saw this, go ahead.
What are the sides of the story what are you concerned with? Like the industry versus the consumer, or the...
Yeah. So like the story opens with, a sob story. This is a person who has worked really hard. They're presumably middle class, and they were promised there was the golden promise of the 401k that was going to take care of them in retirement. Now they're approaching retirement age. They can't. So let's turn around. Let's blame the 401k. That's kind of where the article starts. We set it up that way. Let's talk about what happened. Was this project called the 401k that's been around for half a century, was it a failure? Did it fail the middle class Americans that it's actually a loophole in a tax law update? Did it fail its initial purpose, which was to provide for the middle class and the lower middle class in retirement? That's the thesis. And the answer, do you think he answers that question? Do you think he comes up with like a yes or no, like did it fail or was it a mistake? Do you think he actually answers that question in this article?
Well, what's on trial here, I agree with you, is the 401k. But subtly, what's on trial here is the American dream, right? Like if you just if you bootstrap yourself, like who does America work for? And spoiler alert, it works for the rich. Okay. So I think he answers the question in one of the first few paragraphs when he says 49% of Americans aged 55 to 65 have no personal retirement savings at all. So I think half the people in America have no personal retirement savings. Yeah. So I think later on in the article, they mentioned there's a 40-year experiment with a do-it-yourself pensions has been an utter failure, is a quote from the article. And I'm going to have to agree with them on that. What do you think?
I agree with that. I always am hesitant about relying so much on this idea of like pensions, like, oh, our grandparents had pensions. Like pensions, like if we go back another 50 years, like pensions had not been around for 200 years and were so awesome, right? Pensions came about, I don't know exactly my history here, but I'm going to guess after World War I-ish, like industry explodes. We have people working for companies. We have, labor is in short supply. We need to have people here. We need to have benefits here. So let's give out these pensions. That's going to work really well. The government's going to be supportive of them. They're probably going to give these companies tax breaks for offering pensions. Like pensions are not like a given. They were just very specifically this thing that the silent generation was sort of it was expected that it was part of a job. And pensions, we still have very active and very lucrative pensions in government, right? If you work for the government, you have great pension. You work for the fire department, great pension. Police department, great pension. Education, TBD, whether it's actually a great pension, but it does exist. So I don't like this like, oh, pensions went away and were replaced with 401ks. I don't know if pensions were the answer. Some pensions are going bankrupt and are running out of money. So like, I still don't think we've solved this retirement thing.
Yeah, about halfway through the article, there is an economist that's introduced that has been essentially raging against 401ks for the past 30 years and has written about their failures. And she mentions, she talks a lot about pensions and how she thinks that it was a shift away from the working class focus of like kind of like the New Deal focus of like the 50s and 60s that was routed out with Reaganomics and Nixon and the McCarthy era post World War II, post FDR, when the New Deal kind of got conflated with communism and socialism, and that's where we lost all of that. And then Reagan kind of put the nail in the coffin. But in the article, it mentions that even some of the antagonism comes from this belief that in the 50s and the 60s, like we were on a better path, right? There's that post World War II, we kind of owned the entire world. Like we had it by the cojones at that point, which has definitely changed a lot at this point. But really, at their peak, it mentions in the article that only 50% of Americans even had pensions, even at their peak. Right. Which is kind of wild. So like we've always kind of been DIYing and you've always been on your own. Like Social Security, which was the only thing, one of the few things that's survived since the 1930s in terms of social benefits and is constantly under attack by the Republicans, is really the only thing that's guaranteed. And even that is slipping. And it's mentioned in the article here. I think you have a note here about the girl, like people's feelings about Social Security in America now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like if 50% of Americans don't have enough saved for retirement right now, I don't know I forget what the percentages are of how many people have 401ks. Like, it's less than pensions, but it's not that much, or maybe it's even more than pensions. And so could we argue that if you had access to a pension in 1950, are you one of the people that he's talking about in this article that not only has access to a 401k, but has disposable income or, enough savings to be able to contribute? Like, if you had a job that was able to offer you a pension, that meant you had a good job. You probably had one of the best jobs. You had the upper 25% or 50% of jobs available. So could we then equate, maybe you were still working in coal mines, which we wouldn't equate to software engineer who's got a mega backdoor 401k right now. But like, if we're trying to compare apples to apples here, like, isn't that kind of the same thing? Like, what was the best job you could get with a little bit of education and a lot of hard work in 1956 versus, 2016? I don't know.
Don't even get me started. There's a lot of boomer. Yeah, there's a lot of boomery things in this article that I'll dig into later. But yeah, apparently, if you graduated with a high school degree, you could get a pension back then and just graduate with a gold watch and a guaranteed $5,000 per month for the rest of your life outside of your Social Security. All right. But like, speaking of like, there is like a bit of class distinction in this article, a little bit of like class warfare and like wealth inequality commentary. Like, it's mentioned that 401ks, and I have some personal thoughts about this as well. Like, 401ks do work if you're rich, right? If you've got money, like disposable income to throw into a tax deferred account, right? Well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're scoffing at people that tell you that you need to save for retirement, right? It's like, also, like, the people that I've had conversations with about their 401k when it comes to their net worth, I actually had a conversation this morning with a prospect about it. Like, they almost mention their balances, like it's just like an afterthought. This guy mentioned that he had $1 million in a 401k after discussing all of the other assets that he had. Like, oh. And he's like, oh yeah, I also have that $1 million in that 401k. It's like, yes, because if you can contribute to a 401k, you don't have this paycheck to paycheck problem. The tax advantages of putting it in there are almost like, oh yeah, of course I'll take advantage. I don't really need it. Like, I'll just dump this money in here.
$23,000 and I'll grab a tax. And I'm also in probably one of the highest tax brackets, so I'll get actually an outsized tax benefit from it. I'll pay a lot less. I'll carve out $23,000 of my income from federal and state taxes. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, why are they, like, my comment, like, I'm reading this and I almost forgot that you could put almost $70,000 into a 401k. Like, why? Why is that available to people? Like, the people that can put $70,000 in a tax advantage account don't need the break at all. Surprise, surprise, that this is what's going on in this country. And
sorry, this has been a while. Remind me, there's a certain tax credit. We haven't filed a return like this in a long time. There's a certain tax credit that's like a tax credit that rewards you for saving into your 401k, the retirement savers credit, but it's only available up to like, what, $70,000 of income, which always struck me as like, who the hell is getting this? Like, this tax credit is literally only for people who have parents who are supporting them or some other source of income that's not showing up as income, because who making $70,000 a year has $6,000 to spare to put in a 401k. I didn't when I was making that. Like, you need to spend that money on your life or paying down your loans or whatever. Like,
yeah, I think it's the small, you're talking about, I used to get excited about these things as well. Right? It's the small business savers retirement credit or something like that, where it sounds awesome. Like, if you're low income, but you have to put something like over $10,000 and make less than $50,000 into the retirement account. It's like, oh, who can put $10,000 to $15,000 into a retirement savings account when they're only making $50,000? And to your point, it's somebody that has other income streams coming in, like they have family money.
Okay, here we go. I found it. Here's the IRS. Yeah, it's called the Retirement Savings Contributions Credit, also known as the Savers Credit. Yeah, you get to offset you get a $2,000 tax credit only on joint married filing joint incomes up to $73,000, and singles. Guess what your income as a single person. Guess what the upper limit is as a single person to get this tax credit.
I'm going $45,000.
$36,000. $36,500.
So as a self-employed person.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're just out of college and your parents are supporting you, because you have that awesome luxury, that awesome access to that, you're contributing to your 401k, you'll get this little tax credit. Good for you. And I don't know of anyone else who would qualify for this.
Yeah, bro.
So, I mean, we're at, like, the big picture of this article is that tax policy can have dramatic impacts on the way that people behave and the way employers behave, which creates, like, the thesis of the article is like this: the 401k was like a fluke. some guy read the tax code, saw there was a loophole, and was like, oh, these things that we do for executives, let's do them for everyone. And then smart leaders of corporations were like, oh, sweet. If we do this, then we don't have to have these pensions. Let's slash all the pensions since everyone's excited about the 401k. Let's put the burden back on the individual. And like our profits are going to go through the roof. Like, great. And that's basically what's been happening for 50 years.
Yeah, I read that as it's kind of, I read it a little differently because CPA brain, like I'm just imagining this guy, what's his name? Bennett or Benna, Ted Benna. He's like an IRC retirement benefits consultant who's just like combing through this new section of like the Reagan bills. And he goes to section 401. He's like, am I reading this right? I'm giving him a Southern voice. He's from Pennsylvania.
Well, no, and that is fair because the writer of the article goes to meet him in a Cracker Barrel. So that your Southern accent is warranted.
He lives in Pennsylvania, but this is a Southern man. I know a Southern man when I see one because later on in the article, he said the creator didn't create us to spend 30 years doing nothing. He hates retirement, even though he invented the 401k. He says this out of Cracker Barrel.
And he's still working, right? He's still working,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
he's still working into his
70s. This is what's wrong with America, baby. Well, not wrong with America, just different about America. Anyway, so yeah, like at the time, I guess marginal tax rates were 70%. So he was looking for an opportunity to reduce taxable income, and that's what 401ks do. He was like working with this local bank who didn't end up like biting on him saying like, hey, look, the code says here, this is like the origin story. This little code section says that we can stash all your executives' money away, but they didn't do it. The bank was like, they're going to screw us. So he just does it for his own friend. It sounds like you and me, honestly, like looking at the code.
I was like, ooh, I was like, we would have done this. We would have interpreted this in a weird way.
Yeah. So he invented this in 79 and the guy's still alive and still working, which is just insane. And yeah, like, could you, of course, like this church dude invented the retirement in America and like church and state has failed again here in America. It's like the creator didn't intend us to stop working. So
yeah, cause
live a humiliating life into your 70s.
God came to me in a vision and said, never retire. So therefore I'm going to make it so that every single person will have to work well into their 80s because that's what God wants.
There's so much boomer shit in this article. I love it so much.
Tell me. All right. But okay. So I believe in 401ks. I think if we didn't have 401ks, we wouldn't have anything. And had 401ks not come along, I think pensions would have been slashed anyway and replaced with something else worse that's even worse for the American worker and the American taxpayer. So if you have access to a 401k and you're able to contribute to it, read the rules of your employer 401k, because chances are you might find this little thing called a safe harbor clause, which means that your employer has to contribute 3% of your salary, even if you're contributing nothing. So that's like this like silver lining here. There are protections in place for workers to prevent big, fat, and happy business owners from saving for their own retirement without helping out their employees. So that's a practical takeaway for our listeners is if you have a 401k and you feel like you can't contribute to it or you can't contribute the maximum, that's fine. Contribute a little bit because there might be an employer match. And that's our free money. That's our kind of like placeholder for a pension.
Yeah, there's some behavioral economics and like some social engineering questions in this article as well. It's like 401ks are self-directed, right? So it's up to you. You can take care of, if you take care of yourself, like ostensibly you could put your money in the right mutual fund and do way better than a pension, right? Or you could put all of it in the wrong mutual fund and it could go to zero. Like probably not going to go to zero, but you know what I mean? And then with the pension, it's like takes all of the choice off your plate, which is supposedly un-American, right? But it does put you on a path where you don't have to control it, right? It's like it's taken care of for you by professionals, but there are many pensions that have gone out of business, right? And they just disappear. It's not like U.S. Steel is still pumping out pension payments to all those people that worked there, right? So there's a lot of, we need a mix, right? Like we need diversified streams of income. And I guess Social Security, like I guess there used to be 3 streams of income, right? The 3 chairs or the three legs of the stool.
That was CFP 101.
Oh yeah, baby.
Day one.
Social Security, 401k, and a pension, right? If you had that, then there was no chance that you were going to run out of money, right? I guess you could supplement it with a little bit of annuity income or what have you, but we don't have that anymore. We don't have pensions to rely on. And also pensions get kind of like associated with unions, which have all shrank in size over the past 50 years. There's like a lot of, like, again, that Reaganomics and that shifting. The great risk shift was one of my favorite quotes in here, was something that happened in the 80s when it came to healthcare, retirement, all this risk got shifted onto individuals. And it's like also when you have the powerful lobbyists that saw the 401ks, they can't make money off the pensions. Like Wall Street can't make money off your pension. What they can make money off of is, by the way, this is how we make money, is managing 1% of your assets and like trying to grow those assets, which it makes things more complicated. It's kind of like the tax law, right? Like the more complicated we keep this, the more professionals are necessary. It's kind of like if we didn't have all this complication, all these accountants could go out and all these financial professionals could go out and work as engineers, like solving real problems or different problems or like natural problems as opposed to man-made problems. It's
like problems that the tax code invented for itself.
Yeah.
To employ accountants and financial advisors.
I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast, but I was in a law school class for estate planning and as part of my master's program, and this estate planning professor is going on and on about CRUTs or CRATs or some ways to avoid estate tax. And he's like, and he just stopped in the middle and looked at all these lawyers to be. And he goes, by the way, do y'all realize there's like 300,000 estate planning professionals in the country and accountants? And like, if we just did away with all this complexity, he like waves his hand at the board, like all these complex stuff. He goes, y'all could all just be like nuclear physicists and we could all solve energy problems.
Yeah.
And he just got quiet. And he went back into it. We were all like, oh, shit. Like, he kind of like broke the fourth wall for a second.
Yeah. He's like, wait, what are we doing here? I mean, what's his face?
Awesome.
Scott Galloway, who's a thinker that I respect a lot. I forget, like it was like a year ago on a podcast, was basically like, yeah, I'm rich. I'm super rich. And the smartest person I know is my accountant. And I wish they were not an accountant because they're so smart and they figured out all this crazy shit for me to like not pay taxes. And I love them for it. And I'm happy to do it. And it's perfectly legal. But imagine if they took her, she referred to her as a woman. Imagine if they took her brain and put her in a science program. Like
exactly.
we'd be colonizing Saturn by now.
Colonizing Saturn.
Actually, before you,
I'm not going to fact check y'all.
Before you dispute me, we skipped the what are you watching and reading, so I'm just going to call it back for a quick second. I am rewatching for the fourth time now the show on Amazon Prime called The Expanse. It is based on a book series. The first one is Leviathan Wakes, and it is the best science fiction show of the modern era. I love it so much. I've literally watched it 4 times through in the past 4 years. It's so good. My husband's like, what are you doing? The best. Yeah. Like, I'm watching The Expanse. He's like, are you kidding me? Again?
You're doing that meme. That's the
Nathan.
What you doing?
And like, my husband will watch some of the trash that I watch. He's like, I'm not watching this. He's like, I can't watch this with you. But The Expanse is not trash. If you like sci-fi, it's phenomenal. Anyway, I think we've talked enough about 401ks, right?
Have we?
Any final thoughts?
Well, the article tries to recommend some solutions to the retirement problem. And Ted Bana in here, he's not a big fan of the fees. I just want to comment on that. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned about like the industry taking advantage of Ted Bana's discovery, and he's like, I don't mind that I invented the 401k. What I do mind is that Wall Street got involved and created all these high cost mutual fund fees, which thankfully, in 2024, we've seen the average fees significantly diminish over the past 30, 40 years, which is great. They still exist. I've still seen so many retirement accounts. You and I have seen so many TS, annuities plans for teachers. Unfortunately, the people that need low-cost retirement plans the best, like at TIACREF, they have the highest ones with all those bullshit annuities with 70-page individual. Anyway, so some of the solutions that are recommended in the plan, I guess in Congress right now, there's this thrift savings plan. Did you read about this? It's like this idea that the government's going to create a 401k. I think this is what Australia does. They have the superannuation.
Every time I read that, I'm like, superannuation.
Yeah, it's really funny. I think we need to adopt the 401k, like the Australian, the Aussie plan of like the 401k is separate from where your employer is. You can just take money from your employer and put them. Yeah, which is cool. And there's also the scheme. I just don't think any Trumpers are going to put any of their money in the deep state 401k. I'm sorry that you're not the 50% that are unbanked that don't have 401ks are not going to put their money in Joe Biden's 401k plan. That's just not happening. So I'm not sure if that's going to help out too much. But I'm a big fan of using math and compound interest to help I do endorse a government-sponsored plan. I do like the $10,000 put into a baby's account when
At
they're
birth.
born.
Yes, I love this.
Which at an 8% rate of return gets you $1 million by age 60. I think that there is currently, we have a Bill of Rights. We have 27 amendments, including the Bill of Rights, and we have the right to free speech. I think a right to retirement is something that we should have a right to as well, and a right to not work at some point in your life.
I mean, it's a right to dignified aging. They talk about this in the article a little bit. Like, and do you see that movie, Nomadland?
Yes, they did mention that.
Like,
I forget her name from Burn After. I mean, she's in a million awesome things.
Oh my God.
Burn After Reading, Women Talking.
I love her so much. I can't think of her name.
Fargo. I think it starts with a J.
Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, we'll come back for her.
I got you. You carry it.
I actually ran into her at a restaurant upstate last year, and I was a few martinis in and went up to her and was like, I love you so much. And it's embarrassing that I can't remember her name right now. Also, if you're a celebrity and I love you, I will come up and accost you if I see you. But yeah.
Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand, thank you. Yeah. This idea that we have the right, we've worked for a while. We've contributed to Social Security. We've paid our taxes, right? We've paid, in some cases, up to 50% of our income. Like, we are entitled to aging gracefully at a certain point. If our body doesn't work and we can't walk down the stairs to go to work, we should be able to live in somewhat comfort and dignity in our home, or in a home where people will take care of us.
100%.
So, I'm also a big fan of the 10 grand at birth thing. Even just to teach kids about compound interest. Imagine, instead of taking like whatever nonsense home economics class or nothing, which was my experience, like imagine you're in 5th grade and everyone logs into their Social Security account, or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, oh, wow, I have at that point, hundreds of thousands of dollars because the government put 10K and I can't touch it, right? You can't access it until much later, but you can watch this account grow. Therefore, that's just like an instant education in how investments work.
Yep. Yeah.
Love it.
Read us out?
Are we done?
401.
No.
That's 401.
Bro, we got 401 minutes left.
Oh, right.
My guy. Shane's out. Right. Shane's done.
I'll see you tomorrow.
I think we have time for one question. I'm actually going to play.
I'm going to Contramar after this, so right, I'm ready to rock.
Shane's to micheladas deep for what's the drink? The espresso. Carajillos. All right, I'm going to play a quick voicemail. We have actually a bunch of listener voicemails, so please leave these for us. Here we go. I'm going to play it live.
Hello. My wife and I recently did our taxes for the 2023 year, and we made too much money to contribute to our Roth IRAs. Mm. Unfortunately, we've already both maxed them out and are now wondering what we should do as far as minimizing the penalty for taking the money out. Should we convert it into a traditional IRA? Wondering if you could offer any advice on this. Thank you.
Okay,
awesome.
Got you. So that took me a second to understand what they're trying to say. So he contributed to the Roth before he knew that he'd made too much money to
exactly. So throughout 2023, doing, reading the blogs, doing all the good financial stuff, contributing to a Roth IRA, awesome. Probably doing it monthly.
Very common
clicks
problem.
Over. Very common problem. Oh, wow, I had a really great year. I'm a business owner. I didn't know what my income was going to be. I had a great year. I go to my accountant. We did get this voicemail back in March. So this was before the tax deadline. So before the tax deadline is a different situation than after the tax deadline.
Sorry, listener.
We were a little delayed in getting this podcast going back up. But I did answer this question. So he made too much money. Therefore, the Roth IRA, the tax code that created the Roth IRA basically says if you make too much money, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA. It is not allowed. You are not allowed to put money into that tax advantaged account. So if you've already done it.
Notably, not a limit for, circling back to the article, not a limit for 401k contributions. You can make $5 million in a year.
Correct. Yes.
And make a contribution to a 401k, which is interesting.
Very interesting. Obviously the contribution limits are much lower for an RA. Always get those two mixed up. RA for an IRA. So quick answer is if it's before the tax deadline, you made too much money, not allowed, you can take the money out. Call up your IRA provider, say, I made too much money. I want to withdraw that contribution. No problem. They send you the cash back. Easy. If it's after the tax deadline, it gets a little more complicated. Any thoughts for this poor soul of what to do if you've contributed to a Roth IRA and you were not allowed to, and the tax deadline has now passed?
Well, I think there's a penalty now if they haven't. I think they need to withdraw it. I think the penalty is 6% per year on the balance. So let's just assume they put $6,000 in, just so I can do my math a little bit faster. So it's not that big of a deal. It's actually only $360 if you leave it in there for the full year. So we're halfway through the year, so you're looking at $180. So I would withdraw it or convert it to a trad IRA. Honestly, I forget if you can do that. You'll have to ask one of my CPAs that's more in the weeds on that. I don't know. You got to take it out. You should be doing backdoor Roth IRAs if you're making too much money. Fortunately, with a backdoor Roth IRA, you can make a contribution to a traditional IRA first, which there is not going to be any income limits on that. What will happen if you make too much money is it will just be reclassified as a non-deductible IRA, and then you can convert it to a Roth IRA after the fact. So making a direct contribution to a Roth IRA if you don't know how much money you're going to make is actually a common mistake that you should avoid if you're a person with variable income. Your thoughts?
Yep. Yeah, agree. I mean, practically, I think the best way to handle this is save money. I feel like we said this last week about taxes, but I just love this strategy. Save money in a high yield savings account called IRA and just put money in there, and then look at your expenses, look at your income on November 30th, see where you're at, try to make an educated guess. If you're not sure, just wait, because it's messy to untangle this stuff. Like, I know you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to save. So wait until you actually have your tax return done with your accountant and see what your accountant recommends. And then we're good to go, right? Like, I commend you for trying to do that Roth, but like, it's going to get messy when you got to undo it. And we undo this stuff all the time, right? If you made a mistake, it's not a big deal. Like Shane said, couple $100 penalty, just get it out of there. So, and if you miss a year of IRA contributions, life is not over. As
a frequent penalty payer, I might have a different approach than others.
As a goody two shoes, when in doubt, go into the high yield savings account.
And that's why we work so well together. Peanut butter and jelly, baby.
That's right. By the way, which is the greatest snack ever. Anyway, with that said, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Liquidity Event. Email us your financial problems at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. Leave us a voicemail at memo.fm/liquidityevent. We will play it on the air. Thank you so much. Bye.